All right, let's get right into it. We're going to do a masterclass on apartment composting. I'm going to cover absolutely everything you need to know to get started, dodge all those common mistakes, and turn your kitchen waste into something incredible, even if you're working with the tiniest of spaces.
So you might be asking, why is this such a big deal? Well, get this. A staggering 60% of the trash in an average home is organic stuff. We're talking about fruit peels, veggie scraps, coffee grounds. All of it is basically black gold just waiting to be made. Instead of tossing it, you can totally transform it.
And this isn't just some abstract idea. I mean, look at a real-world city like Kathmandu. Every single day, they're dealing with over 1,000 tons of waste. And most of that is organic material getting trucked off to landfills that are already overflowing. It's a huge strain on the environment. But you know what? The solution can literally start right there on your balcony.
So how do you actually begin? Well, the very first step is picking your composting system. And no, you don't need a massive backyard. You just need the right setup for your apartment. Let's walk through some of the best options out there.
Okay, what's great here is how simple your choices are. On the one hand, you've got the DIY balcony bin. This is as cheap and easy as it gets. Seriously, any plastic bin with a good, secure lid will work. The real trick is to drill some small holes for airflow and pop it up on a couple of bricks. On the other hand, you have systems like the Smart Bucket, which is really popular in places like Nepal. It's a clever 2-bucket setup with a filter and a little tap, which makes collecting that liquid byproduct, the leachate, super easy.
And hey, if you want to level up a bit, or maybe you're just in a hurry, there are other cool methods. Electric composters are these neat little countertop machines that use heat to create a pre-compost material in, like, 24 hours. And then there's vermicomposting, which actually uses red worms to do all the hard work for you. They produce some of the most nutrient-rich fertilizer you can possibly get.
All right, now we're getting to what I honestly think is the most important part of this whole thing. I want you to forget everything you've ever heard about composting being stinky or attracting pests. If you just follow these 5 simple rules, I promise you'll have a clean, smell-free, and super successful compost bin.
Rule number 1 is all about balance. This chart shows you the golden ratio. You need about 2 parts browns for every 1 parts greens. So what does that actually mean? Your greens are all your wet kitchen scraps. Think veggie peels and coffee grounds. Your browns are the dry stuff like shredded cardboard, dried leaves, or cocoa peat. Getting this ratio right is your number 1 defense against bad smells and a soggy, gross mess.
Rule number 2 is what I call the chop hack. It's so simple. The smaller the scraps, the faster the little microbes can get to work. I mean, sure, you can toss in a whole banana peel and it'll break down. Eventually. But if you chop everything into pieces smaller than an inch, you're speeding up the process like crazy. We're talking about turning months of waiting into just a few weeks.
Now here is a fantastic pro tip, especially if you have a busy week. Rule 3, freeze your scraps. Just keep a container in your freezer and toss your scraps in there. This does 2 amazing things at once. First, it stops any smells from even starting in your kitchen, and second, it helps kill off any pesky fruit fly eggs that might be hanging around.
Okay, rule number 4 is the inoculant trick. Think about it like making yogurt. You always need a little bit of a starter culture to get a new batch going, right? Well, it's the exact same idea with compost. When you start a brand new bin, just mix in about 20% of finished compost from your last batch. This gives it a huge head start with a healthy population of microbes from day 1.
And finally, rule number 5, the squeeze test. This is your go-to method for checking moisture levels. Every couple of weeks, just put on a glove and grab a handful. If it's dripping wet when you squeeze, it's too wet. Time to add more browns. If it feels totally dry and crumbly, it's too dry. Add some more greens or just a little splash of water. You're aiming for the perfect consistency of a damp, wrung-out sponge.
Okay, let's just go there. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. What about all the stuff that makes people nervous about starting to compost in the first place? Yeah, I'm talking about the smells and the creepy crawlies. This is always the number 1 question, isn't it? Nobody wants their balcony turning into some weird science experiment gone wrong. But here's the secret. These problems are almost always just a sign of a simple imbalance, and it is so easy to fix.
So let's try to reframe this a little. Those little white maggots you might see, they're not your enemies. They are actually the larvae of the black soldier fly, and they are absolute powerhouse decomposers. They work incredibly fast. So if you see them, it just means your pile is super active. But hey, if they really bother you, just make sure to bury your fresh scraps under a nice, thick layer of browns.
And if you ever do notice a bad smell, your compost is just trying to tell you one of 2 things. First, the pile might be too wet,
which means your green to brown ratio is a little off. The fix, just add more browns. Easy. Second, it might be starving for oxygen. The fix for that? Grab a stick, poke some holes in the pile, and give it a good turn to let some air in. That's it. It really is that simple.
Now, after all this effort, which, once you get the hang of it, is really not much at all, we get to the absolute best part, harvesting the amazing rewards for your plants and for the planet.
And here is the payoff. In about 6 to 10 weeks, all those kitchen scraps will have turned into this beautiful, dark, earthy-smelling compost. It is packed with nutrients, and it is way better than any synthetic fertilizer you could ever buy in a store.
And whatever you do, do not forget the liquid gold. That leachate, or compost tea, that you collect is an incredibly powerful liquid fertilizer. But, and this is important, you have to dilute it. A ratio of about 1 part tea to 8 or 10 parts water is the perfect mix for feeding your houseplants or your balcony garden.
When you really think about it, what you're doing is so much bigger than just making plant food. You are actually taking part in a circular economy. You're taking something that was considered waste and turning it back into a valuable resource, into wealth. You're closing the loop, right in your own home.
So please, don't be afraid to just get started. You might have a batch that gets a little too wet or maybe a bit smelly at first. That's okay. It's all just part of the learning process. Just remember this little quote. Every failure is just compost for your future success. Your first try might not be perfect, but it's a huge step toward making a real tangible difference.